You've tried to learn English 100 times. You quit every time. What if I told you that midnight kisses don't matter, but dawn promises do? This is my real story, a lonely New Year's Eve, a stranger at a laundromat, and a promise that taught me English not through textbooks, but through heartbreak, marriage, kids, and a happy ending. No grammar drills. Just life. Stay. The midnight that changed nothing. It's December 31st. New Year's Eve. The whole world is screaming with joy. Fireworks are about to explode. Couples are kissing on TV screens, in movies, on every social media post you try to avoid. And you? You're sitting on a second-hand couch that smells like someone else's dog. The heater in your small American apartment makes a weird clicking sound every 17 seconds. Outside, your neighbors are laughing. You hear champagne corks pop. Someone yells, "Happy New Year." You look at your phone. 0 messages. 0 missed calls. 0 kisses. That was me 6 years ago. My name is Mai. Not important, really. But my story? It might be yours. Because that night, I made a decision that had nothing to do with romance and everything to do with survival. I promised myself, if no one kisses me at midnight, I will learn to kiss the language instead. Sounds dramatic, right? But here's the truth no one tells you about learning English as an adult in the United States. It's lonely. Not the kind of lonely where you miss your family back home. That's a different beast. I'm talking about the lonely that lives inside your throat. The words you want to say but can't form. The joke you understand but can't laugh at fast enough. The moment at the grocery store when the cashier says, "Did you find everything okay?" And you freeze because okay has 7 different meanings depending on her tone. That night, I had been living in the US for exactly 2 years and 3 months. I had a green card. I had a job at a small nail salon. I had a tiny studio apartment in a city that wasn't New York or Los Angeles, just a regular American town where people say "ope" when they bump into you. And I had 0 confidence in my English. Let me be painfully honest. I had studied English in my home country for 12 years. 12. I knew the past perfect tense. I could write a 5-paragraph essay about environmental pollution. But when my American neighbor asked me, "How's it going?" I answered, "It's going by bus." She laughed. I didn't understand why until 3 days later, when I Googled the phrase and realized "how's it going" doesn't ask about transportation. That's the kind of humiliation that makes you want to quit. And trust me, I quit. I quit 100 times. I bought English learning apps and deleted them after 3 days. I watched YouTube grammar lessons but fell asleep after 5 minutes. I told myself, I'm too old. My brain is too tired. I'll never sound like them. Sound familiar? Here's what I didn't know that New Year's Eve. The problem wasn't my brain. It wasn't my age. It wasn't even my accent. The problem was that I was trying to learn English like a robot memorizing code. But English, real English, the kind that makes people fall in love, get married, raise children, and build a life, doesn't live in grammar books. It lives in broken promises. In awkward silences. In the moment you say "I love you" too early or too late. In the text message you send at 2 a.m. with 3 typos but all the right feelings. So back to that couch. At 11:47 p.m. I did something stupid. I put on my coat, the thin one that didn't match the freezing temperature, and walked to the 24-hour laundromat 3 blocks away. Why? Because I had 2 dirty towels and because sitting alone in my apartment felt like slowly drowning in my own thoughts. The laundromat was empty. Fluorescent lights buzzing. The smell of detergent and loneliness. I put my towels in a machine, poured soap, and stared at the spinning drum. That's when I heard the door open. A man walked in. American. Tall in that awkward way. Carrying a black trash bag full of laundry. He didn't look at me. He just went to the machine on the far side and started loading. I should tell you, back then, my heart would race every time an American spoke to me. Not because I was shy, but because I was terrified of making a mistake. My brain would scream, don't say the wrong verb tense. Don't say I go instead of I went. Don't embarrass yourself. So I said nothing. The man finished loading his machine. He sat down 2 seats away from me. Then, without looking, he said, "Tough night?" 3 seconds of silence. My internal translator was stuck. Tough, difficult? Strong? Chewy? No, not chewy. Say something, my. Yes, I said. The night is hard. He turned his head. He didn't laugh. He just nodded slowly and said, yeah. Holidays are weird when you're alone. Then he went back to staring at his phone. That was it. That was the whole conversation. 9 words from him. 4 words from me. But something shifted in my chest. Because for the first time in months, someone had seen me, not my accent, not my broken grammar, not my foreign face, just me. A person having a tough night. The clock hit midnight while the washing machines were spinning. No countdown. No confetti. No kiss. But also no tears. Because at 12:03 a.m., the man stood up, looked at me, and said, hey. Same time next year? If we're both still here doing laundry at midnight, I'll buy you coffee. I thought he was joking. I laughed nervously and said, okay. Then he left. I finished my laundry. Walked home. Slept in my clothes. And woke up on January 1st with absolutely no idea that those 13 words would change everything. Here's the science part, and I promise to keep it light. Neuroscientists have discovered that your brain remembers emotional events 5 times more strongly than neutral ones. It's called emotional memory enhancement. That night, my brain didn't remember the grammar of his sentence. It remembered the feeling of being seen. And that feeling? That's the real key to learning English. Not flashcards. Not verb conjugation drills. Not obsessing over the difference between maybe and perhaps. It's emotion. It's connection. It's the messy, awkward, beautiful human need to say something and be understood. So if you're watching this right now, and you're tired of feeling stupid because your English isn't perfect, stop. Breathe. You're not stupid. You're just learning in a way that no textbook ever taught you. That man at the laundromat? His name was Jake. And that joke about next year? He meant it. But that's a story for section 2. For now, remember this, midnight didn't give me a kiss. It gave me a promise. And sometimes, a promise is worth more than 1,000 perfect sentences. A promise at the laundromat. Here's the thing about promises made on New Year's Eve. You're not supposed to keep them. They're like diet resolutions or vows to wake up at 5 a.m., whispered into the noise of fireworks and quickly forgotten by January 2nd. So when Jake said, "Same time next year? I'll buy you coffee," my brain filed it under polite stranger nonsense and moved on. Except my heart didn't. For the next 12 months, I thought about that night more than I care to admit. Not because I had a crush on him. I didn't even know his last name. But because something about those 13 words felt like a door that had been left slightly open. And doors left open? They make you curious. So I did what any sensible, emotionally guarded person would do. I ignored it. I went back to my life, the nail salon, the awkward English conversations. The small victories and daily humiliations that come with being an immigrant learning a new language in a new country. Let me give you an example of those humiliations. 3 weeks after that New Year's Eve, I tried to order coffee at a Starbucks. The barista asked, "What size?" I said, "Medium." She said, "Grande?" I said, "No, medium." She blinked. I blinked. A line formed behind me. Finally, she pointed to the cups. I pointed to the middle one. She wrote Grande on the cup anyway. I walked away feeling like I had failed a test that nobody warned me about. That's the silent pain of learning English in America. It's not that people are mean. Most Americans are genuinely kind. They'll smile at your accent. They'll say you're fine when you apologize for stumbling. But kindness doesn't erase the exhaustion of translating every single word in your head before it leaves your mouth. By summer, I had almost forgotten about Jake. Almost. Then September came. I was walking home from the bus stop when I saw a flyer on a telephone pole. It was a lost dog poster. But what caught my eye was the handwriting at the bottom. Big, messy, capital letters, "Please help. He's my best friend." I stood there for 5 minutes, not because of the dog, but because those 4 words hit me like a truck. He's my best friend. Such a simple sentence. No fancy vocabulary. No past perfect continuous tense. Just 4 words that said everything. And I realized something painful: I couldn't write a sentence like that. Not because I didn't know the words, but because I was so afraid of making grammar mistakes that I never wrote or said anything that came from my actual heart. That was my problem. Not my accent. Not my vocabulary. My fear. Here's a tiny bit of science, because I promised you this wouldn't be empty motivation. Psychologists call it effective filtering. When your brain detects a threat, like embarrassment, judgment, or failure, it literally blocks new information from sticking. You can study a word 50 times, but if you're stressed, your brain treats it like background noise. So all those months of forcing myself to memorize verb tables? Useless. Because I was learning from fear, not from curiosity. October passed. November. December. And then it was December 31st again. I stood in my apartment, same couch, same clicking heater, same smell of borrowed dog, and I had a choice. Stay home. Watch the ball drop on TV. Pretend that night at the laundromat never happened. Or walk 3 blocks in the freezing cold to see if a stranger kept a stupid promise. I put on my coat. The thin one. The laundromat looked exactly the same. Fluorescent lights buzzing. The faint smell of bleach. Rows of washing machines spinning like they had been waiting for me. No Jake. I sat down on the same plastic chair. Told myself, see? He was just being nice. Nobody keeps promises from New Year's Eve. Go home, my. But I didn't move. 11:47 p.m. The clock on the wall had a dead battery, so I used my phone. 11:52, 11:55. I started gathering my things. Then the door opened. Not Jake. A woman with 2 giant suitcases of laundry. She smiled at me. I smiled back. She loaded her machines and left. False alarm. 11:58, I stood up. Walked toward the door. My hand was on the handle when I heard footsteps behind me. Running footsteps. On the sidewalk outside. The door swung open again. And there he was. Jake. Red-faced from the cold. Carrying 2 paper cups of coffee. One in each hand. Breath fogging in the air. He looked at me. I looked at him. Then he said something I will never forget, not because the English was perfect, but because it was real. You came. 2 words. That's all. But my brain didn't have to translate them. My heart did. I laughed. I don't know why. Maybe because I was nervous. Maybe because I couldn't believe it. I pointed at the coffee and said, "You remembered." He handed me a cup. I don't make promises I can't keep. We stood there in the doorway of a 24-hour laundromat at 5 minutes past midnight. No fireworks. No music. No romantic soundtrack. Just the hum of dryers and the sound of 2 people who had spent an entire year being lonely and decided, for no logical reason, to be lonely together instead. He said, "I'm Jake, by the way. I should have told you that last year." I said, "I'm Mai. And my English is still terrible." He took a sip of his coffee. Good. Because my laundry skills are also terrible. We can be terrible together. That was the moment. Not a kiss. Not a declaration of love. Just a stupid joke about bad English and bad laundry. But here's what I learned that night, standing in that fluorescent lit doorway. Real connection doesn't require perfect grammar. It requires showing up. It requires saying you came when you mean I was hoping you would. It requires handing someone coffee when you have no idea if they'll even be there. For 12 months, I had been hiding my English mistakes like dirty secrets. I thought if I said the wrong verb tense, people would see me as less than. But Jake didn't care about my verb tenses. He cared that I showed up. And that changed everything. Not overnight. Not magically. But slowly, like a washing machine spinning dirty towels until they come out clean. That night, we sat on those plastic chairs until 2 a.m. We talked about nothing. His job. My job. The fact that neither of us had family nearby. He spoke slowly. Not in a patronizing way, in a "I want you to understand me" way. And for the first time, I didn't feel pressured to respond perfectly. I made mistakes. I said I go to the store yesterday instead of I went. I mixed up he and she. At one point, I called him Jake and Jack in the same sentence. He didn't correct me. Not once. And that, more than any grammar lesson, more than any app, more than any textbook, is why I'm telling you this story. Because the best way to learn English isn't to be corrected. It's to be understood. Before we left, Jake looked at me and said, "Next New Year's Eve?" I said, "What about it?" He smiled. "No promises. Just coffee. Same time. Same place. If you want." I wanted. But that's a story for section 3. For now, remember this, a promise doesn't have to be forever to be real. Sometimes, it just has to be kept once. What if midnight kisses start at dawn? You know that feeling when you're waiting for something, really waiting. The kind where you check the clock every 3 minutes, and then the moment arrives, and it's nothing like you imagined? That was me, exactly 1 year later. December 31st. Again. But this time, I didn't go to the laundromat at midnight. I went at dawn. Let me explain. After that second New Year's Eve coffee with Jake, something shifted inside me. Not love, not yet. But hope. The kind of quiet hope that doesn't shout or sing. It just sits next to you on a plastic chair and says, maybe things can be different. Jake and I exchanged numbers that night. We texted. Badly, on my part. I would type messages, delete them, retype them, then give up and send a thumbs up emoji. He never complained. He just sent voice messages, slow, clear, patient, telling me about his day. And my English? It started growing. Not because I studied. But because I had a reason. Here's the thing no language app tells you. Your brain doesn't care about grammar rules. It cares about survival and connection. When you need to understand someone you care about, your brain suddenly finds resources it never had before. It's like magic, except it's not magic. It's neuroscience. They call it motivated attention. When a stimulus matters to you emotionally, your brain processes it deeper and faster. That's why you can learn a song's lyrics in 2 listens but struggle to remember a vocabulary list you stared at for an hour. So by the time December rolled around again, I had learned more real English in 11 months of texting Jake than in 12 years of school. But here's the problem. I started falling for him. Not in a cute, movie romance way. In a messy, terrifying, what if I say the wrong thing and ruin everything way. Every text message became a battlefield. Every voice note made my heart race. I wanted to tell him how I felt, but I didn't have the words. Not because my vocabulary was too small. Because my courage was. So I made a decision. A strange one. On December 31st, I didn't go to the laundromat at midnight. I woke up at 5 a.m. Put on my coat, still the thin one, and walked there as the sun was rising. Why dawn? Because midnight kisses are for people who have everything figured out. They're for rom-coms and Instagram posts. But dawn? Dawn is for people who are still figuring it out. For people who are scared. For people who don't need a perfect moment, just a real one. The streets were empty. The sky was pale orange and purple, like a bruise healing. I stood outside the laundromat, but it was closed. 24 hours? Apparently not on New Year's Day. The sign on the door said open at 8 a.m. I laughed. Of course. Of course the universe would make me wait. So I sat on the curb. Cold seeped through my jeans. My breath fogged in front of me. And I waited. At 6:47 a.m., I heard footsteps. Not Jake's. A woman pushing a stroller. She smiled at me. I smiled back. She kept walking. At 7:12 a.m. An old man walked his dog. The dog tried to sniff my shoe. The old man apologized. I said, it's okay, and for once, I didn't overthink the pronunciation. At 7:58 a.m., a car pulled up. Jake got out. He wasn't carrying coffee this time. He was carrying a small backpack. He looked tired, like he hadn't slept. He saw me sitting on the curb, and his face did something strange. It relaxed. Like he had been holding his breath for hours and finally let it go. He walked over and sat down next to me. Not too close. Just close enough. The laundromat's closed, he said. I noticed. You're here early. You're here, too. Silence. The kind of silence that isn't empty, it's full. Full of things neither of us knew how to say. Then Jake spoke. Slowly. Carefully. Like he was choosing every word. I've been thinking about you every day for 2 years. Not in a creepy way. I don't know how to explain it. In a way that scares me. My heart stopped. Then started again, twice as fast. Why does it scare you? I asked. My voice was steady, which surprised me. Maybe because at 7 a.m., after no sleep, your brain stops overthinking and just speaks. He looked at the sky. Because I'd been alone for a long time. And I told myself I was fine with it. But then you showed up at that laundromat. And you kept showing up. And now I don't want to be fine anymore. That was the moment. Not a kiss. Not a confession of love. Just a man being honest in the cold morning light, using simple words that any English learner could understand. I've been thinking about you. It scares me. I don't want to be fine anymore. No past perfect continuous. No conditional clauses. Just heart. I turned to face him. Jake, my English is still not good. I make mistakes every day. Sometimes I say eat when I mean ate. Sometimes I mix up boring and bored. But I need you to know something. He waited. I'm not here because I want coffee. I'm here because you're the first person who ever made me feel like my mistakes don't matter. And I don't know what that means. But I didn't want to wait until midnight to tell you. He smiled. Not a big smile, a small one, the kind that hides in the corner of your mouth. Then he reached into his backpack and pulled out 2 thermoses. I brought tea. Coffee is bad for my anxiety. I laughed. Actually laughed. Not a nervous laugh, a real one. We sat on that curb until the laundromat opened at 8 a.m. We didn't kiss. We didn't declare our undying love. We just drank tea and watched the sun rise higher, and somewhere in the middle of that ordinary morning, I realized something. Midnight kisses are overrated. They're loud and performative and full of pressure. But dawn? Dawn is quiet. Dawn is honest. Dawn is 2 people choosing to show up when no one is watching. That's what this story is really about. Not learning English perfectly. Not finding love at the right time. It's about understanding that some promises don't need midnight. They need patience. They need courage. They need you to sit on a cold curb at 6 a.m. and trust that the other person will show up. And here's the English lesson hidden inside all of this. Stop waiting for the perfect moment to practice. Stop telling yourself, I'll speak when my grammar is better. Because that moment never comes. Perfect doesn't exist. But dawn? Dawn happens every single day. You don't need to kiss at midnight. You just need to start at dawn. Jake and I didn't become a couple that morning. We became something better. We became a question mark, an open door, a promise we were both too scared to name. But we kept showing up. Every dawn. Every curb. Every terrible cup of tea. And slowly, word by word, mistake by mistake, my English grew. Not because I studied. Because I had something to say. So if you're watching this and you're afraid to speak, afraid to make mistakes, afraid that your English will never be good enough for love, for work, for life, remember this. Midnight isn't the only time for new beginnings. Dawn works, too. And sometimes, dawn is better. Go teep tuc denan fan teep theo. My English was a mess, so was my life. Let me tell you about the time I accidentally told my neighbor I was pregnant. I wasn't. But in my defense, the word embarrassed in English sounds nothing like embarazada in Spanish, which means pregnant. I knew that. I really did. But at 8 p.m. on a Tuesday, exhausted after 9 hours of standing at the nail salon, my brain short-circuited. My neighbor, Karen, sweet 65-year-old Karen who brings me banana bread every Christmas, asked, "How are you, my?" And I meant to say, "I'm embarrassed because I forgot to return your mixing bowl." What came out was, "I'm pregnant because I forgot your bowl." Karen's eyes went wide. She grabbed my hand. "Oh my God. Congratulations. Does Jake know?" I stood there, frozen, watching my life flash before my eyes. Because now I had two choices. Explain the mistake and look like an idiot. Or pretend I was pregnant and dig myself into a deeper hole. I chose option 3. I ran inside my apartment and didn't come out for 2 days. That's the thing about learning English as an adult in America. It's not just about vocabulary. It's about the endless, exhausting, hilarious, humiliating parade of mistakes that make you want to crawl under your couch and live there forever. And my life was a mess long before Jake showed up. Let me paint you a picture. Before the laundromat promises and the dawn tea, I was the queen of awkward silences. I once spent 10 minutes in a CVS looking for facial tissue because I forgot the word Kleenex is a brand. I asked a waiter for dead bird instead of dark bread. I told my boss I was constipated when I meant congested, and then watched his face turn 7 different shades of confused. These aren't funny stories I tell now to make you laugh. At the time, they were small deaths. Each mistake felt like proof that I didn't belong here. That I would never belong here. And here's the part nobody talks about. When your English is a mess, your whole life becomes a mess. Because language isn't separate from living. It's how you make friends, go to the doctor, call your kid's school, complain about a broken heater, argue with a cable company. Order food that actually tastes good. I couldn't do any of those things confidently. So I stopped trying. I ate the same 3 things from the same grocery store because I was too scared to ask about unfamiliar vegetables. I never went to the doctor unless I was literally dying. I paid bills I didn't understand because calling customer service in English gave me panic attacks. Jake didn't know any of this at first. He just knew I was quiet and sometimes said weird things. But after that dawn on the curb, things changed. We started seeing each other more. Not dates, exactly. Just walks. Grocery runs. One time, he helped me fix my sink because I didn't know the word plunger and kept calling it the toilet stick. He never laughed at me. Not once. But he did something better. He made fun of himself. The first time I made a mistake in front of him, I said I cried instead of I cried. He said, "Oh good. Finally someone who speaks worse English than me." I once told my Spanish teacher I was pregnant too. Except I'm a man, so that was a fun conversation. I laughed so hard tea came out of my nose. And that's when I realized something important. The people who matter don't care about your mistakes. They care about your willingness to keep trying. But let me give you the science behind why my English was such a disaster, Because understanding this might save you years of frustration. Your brain has something called the affective filter. Think of it as a gatekeeper between what you hear and what you learn. When you're relaxed, confident, and not afraid of being judged, that gate is wide open. New words and grammar patterns flow right in. But when you're anxious, embarrassed, or terrified of making mistakes, that gate slams shut. You could hear a word 100 times, and your brain will treat it like white noise. For 2 years, my affective filter was locked tight. Every conversation felt like a test I was failing. Every mistake confirmed my worst fear: I'm not good enough. So what changed? Not my brain. Not my age. Not my talent for languages. My environment. Jake created a space where mistakes were funny, not fatal. Where I could say I cried and he would say, same, I cried watching that movie too. He didn't correct me. He mirrored me, repeating my mistake back in a way that showed he understood, then gently using the correct version later. That's not romance. That's neuroscience in action. Studies show that language learners who feel emotionally safe learn twice as fast as those who are constantly corrected. Correction triggers your brain's threat response. Safety triggers curiosity. And curiosity is the engine of all learning. So here's the practical advice I wish someone had given me. Stop studying English like you're preparing for a war. Start living it like you're learning to dance, badly at first, then less badly, then maybe even enjoyably. Find your Jake. Not a boyfriend, a person who makes you feel safe to be wrong. It could be a friend, a coworker, a language exchange partner, even a YouTube comment section where people are kind. And for the love of everything, give yourself permission to be a mess. Because here's the secret no perfect English speaker will tell you. They were a mess too. They still are. Every native speaker says could have instead of could have. Every native speaker freezes when someone asks, how do you spell necessarily? Every native speaker has accidentally called a colleague mom in a meeting. The difference is, they don't let it stop them. So that day with Karen and the imaginary pregnancy? I eventually went back to her house, explained the mistake, and apologized. She laughed so hard she cried. Then she gave me more banana bread and told me a story about the time she told her French boss she was full of eggs instead of full of energy. We're friends now. Real friends. And every time I mess up a word, she says, pregnant again, my? That's the goal. Not perfection. Connection. My English is still a mess. I still say borrow when I mean lend. I still mix up sensitive and sensible. Just last week, I told Jake I was feeling very full of myself when I meant feeling very proud of myself, which means something totally different and much more arrogant. He just handed me a cup of tea and said, you're adorable when you're arrogant. So if you're watching this right now, and your English feels like a disaster zone, good. That means you're trying. That means you're failing forward. And that means you're exactly where you need to be. The mess isn't the enemy. The mess is the classroom. The cultural trap no one talks about. 6 months into whatever Jake and I were doing, dating? Existing together? Nervously drinking tea near each other? I discovered something that no language school prepares you for. Americans lie. Not the bad kind of lie. The polite kind. The kind that makes you want to throw your dictionary against the wall. Let me give you an example. One evening, Jake and I were cooking dinner at his apartment. Well, he was cooking. I was standing in the kitchen holding an onion and trying to look useful. He asked, Does this sauce need more salt? I tasted it. It was perfect. But I didn't know how to say it's perfect without sounding like I was exaggerating. So I said, it's good. He added more salt. Then he asked again. How about now? Now it was too salty. But I didn't want to hurt his feelings. So I said, it's interesting. He smiled and said, awesome. The sauce was ruined. We ate it anyway, pretending. And that night, I Googled what do Americans really mean when they say interesting? The answer nearly broke me. It's good equals it's fine, but I wouldn't choose it. It's interesting equals I hate it but I'm too nice to say so. We should hang out sometime equals I will never see you again. I'll think about it equals absolutely not. No worries equals I am actually worrying, but I want to end this conversation. This is the cultural trap no one talks about. You can learn every word in the dictionary, but you will still be lost if you don't understand the hidden language of politeness, avoidance, and passive aggression that Americans have perfected over centuries. And it gets worse when you add marriage and family to the mix. Let me fast forward a bit. After 2 years of dawns, curbs, and terrible tea, Jake and I finally admitted we were in love. It happened in the least romantic way possible, in the cereal aisle of a Walmart, when I reached for the same box of Cheerios as him. Our hands touched, and he said, I don't want to just meet you at dawn anymore. I want to wake up next to you at dawn. I cried. He cried. An old man nearby said, get a room, kids. We got married 6 months later. Small ceremony. My family couldn't afford to fly from overseas. His family showed up but spent the whole time asking me questions I couldn't fully understand. Where are you really from? I told you, Ohio. Your English is so good. Thank you, I've been practicing since I was 5. Do you celebrate Thanksgiving? We do now. Each question was a tiny cultural trap. They weren't being mean. They were being curious. But curiosity without awareness feels like 100 small paper cuts. Here's the thing about marrying into American culture when you're still learning the language. You're not just learning nouns and verbs. You're learning a whole system of unspoken rules. Rule 1. Americans say I love you constantly, but they mean it differently depending on tone, context, and whether they just spilled coffee on themselves. Rule 2. When an American asks how are you, they do not want to know. They want you to say good, you, and move on. If you actually answer, they will panic. Rule 3. Silence is uncomfortable. Americans will fill any gap of more than 3 seconds with words, any words, even if those words are so, yeah, anyway, that's crazy. For the first year of our marriage, I broke every rule. When Jake's mom asked how are you, I told her about my headache, my worries about work, and the weird noise my car was making. She smiled and backed away slowly. I thought she hated me. Turns out, she just thought I was having a medical emergency. When Jake's dad said, we should have you over for dinner sometime, I waited by the phone for 3 weeks. Nothing. I cried to Jake, your father lied to me. Jake laughed, which was the wrong response, and explained, he wasn't lying. He was being polite. He'll actually invite you in about 6 months. 6 months later, almost to the day, the invitation came. That's the cultural trap. You think everyone is speaking the same language. They are. But they're playing a completely different game. And here's where the English learning lesson lives inside all of this. You cannot learn a language without learning the culture. They are the same thing. Grammar is just the skeleton. Culture is the heartbeat. So how do you escape the trap? You stop trying to translate word for word and start translating intention for intention. When an American says, "Let's grab coffee sometime," they aren't making a plan. They're saying, "I like you enough to pretend we might see each other again." When they say, "No offense, but," they are about to offend you. When they say, "Bless your heart, run." I learned to ask Jake, what did they actually mean, after every family gathering. He would translate the cultural subtext for me like a spy decoding enemy messages. When my aunt said your dress was brave, she meant it's ugly. When my cousin said you're so exotic, she meant she's never left the state. When my mom said I'm fine, she meant you forgot to send a thank you note for the blender. These weren't attacks. They were just American. And slowly, I started to understand that my foreignness wasn't a weakness. It was a superpower. Because I noticed things native speakers don't. I saw the awkwardness behind the politeness. I heard the fear behind the small talk. I realized that most Americans are just as confused as I am, they've just had longer to pretend they're not. The cultural trap is real. But you can learn to dance inside it. Here's my practical advice. When you don't understand what someone means, don't pretend. Ask. Say, "I'm still learning American culture. Can you help me understand what you really meant?" Most people will appreciate your honesty. The ones who don't? They're the trap you want to avoid. Jake and I survived that first year of marriage not because we spoke perfect English, but because we asked stupid questions. Why do you put ice in every drink? Why do you apologize when someone else bumps into you? Why do you say "I could care less" when you mean you couldn't? Each question was a small bridge between two worlds. And here's the beautiful part. The more I asked, the more Jake started asking me about my culture. Why do I take my shoes off at the door? Why do I offer food 3 times before accepting a no? Why do I call every older woman auntie? We were both learning. Both confused. Both making mistakes. And that, more than any grammar rule, is what made our marriage work. The cultural trap isn't something you escape. It's something you learn to see. And once you see it, you stop being trapped. You start being curious. And curiosity, as I keep telling you, is the real key to everything, to language, to love. To building a life in a country that wasn't yours to begin with. So the next time an American says, "That's interesting," and you know they mean, "That's terrible," don't get angry. Get curious. Smile. And say, what would you actually say if you weren't being polite? You might be surprised by their answer. Or they might just run away. Either way, you'll have learned something real. He showed up at my doorstep, with coffee. You know how in movies, the romantic lead always shows up at the perfect moment? Rain pouring. Dramatic music. A speech that makes everyone cry. Real life isn't like that. Real life is you lying on your bathroom floor at 2 a.m. with a fever of 102, wearing mismatched socks, crying because you can't find the thermometer. And also because you just used the last roll of toilet paper and you don't know the English word to call the pharmacy and ask if they deliver. That was me, 18 months into marriage. Jake and I had been living together for a while by then. But that night, he was out of town for work. Some conference in a city I couldn't pronounce. I was alone. Sick. And absolutely convinced I was going to die. Not die dramatically. Die pathetically, on a cold bathroom floor, still wearing the socks with the llamas on them. I called Jake at 2:15 a.m. He didn't answer. I left a voicemail that went something like, Jake. I am very hot. No. I mean my body is hot. Fever. I have fever. And I need the thing. For medicine. The white thing. Please call me. I think I'm dying. But not dying. Just very uncomfortable. I hung up and immediately wanted to disappear into the floor tiles. That voicemail was a masterpiece of bad English. Wrong article. Missing prepositions. The phrase "the white thing" for thermometer. I sounded like a toddler who had escaped from a daycare center. 3 hours later, at 5:17 a.m., someone knocked on my door. I dragged myself off the bathroom floor, put on a robe over my pajamas, and opened the door. Jake stood there. He had driven 4 hours through the night. His eyes were red. His hair was a disaster. He was holding a paper bag from a 24-hour drugstore and 2 cups of coffee. You said the white thing, he said, breathing hard. I bought every white thing in the pharmacy. He opened the bag. Thermometer. Bandages. Cotton balls. A box of baking soda. A small white notebook. A bag of marshmallows. A package of white socks. I started laughing. Then coughing. Then crying. He stepped inside, put the bag on the table, and took my face in his hands. Your English is beautiful. Even when you say the white thing. Especially when you say the white thing. Because you called me. You didn't give up. You found words. And I understood. That was the moment I stopped being afraid of my own voice. Not because my English got better overnight. It didn't. But because I realized something that changed everything. The goal of language isn't perfection. The goal is to be understood well enough that someone drives 4 hours to bring you marshmallows. Here's what happened after that night. I stopped editing myself before speaking. I stopped apologizing for my accent. I stopped saying sorry for my bad English before every sentence. Instead, I started saying here's what I mean and then just trying. And something magical happened. People understood me more. Not less. Because when you speak with confidence, even broken confidence, your listener relaxes. They stop trying to correct you and start trying to understand you. And understanding is a two-way street. It requires effort from both people. Jake started coming home from work with little phrases he had written down for me. Not grammar rules. Real things his coworkers said. Today, Sarah said I'm swamped. That means she's very busy. Tom said it's not rocket science. That means it's easy. My boss said touch base. That means talk briefly. I collected these phrases like other people collect stamps. I wrote them in a notebook I called Real English that no one taught me. Every week, I tried to use one new phrase. Sometimes I used them wrong. I once told Jake's mom I'm swamped when I meant I'm slightly busy with one thing. She looked at my empty calendar and said, "Honey, that's not swamped. That's Tuesday." But I kept trying. And here's the science behind why this worked better than any textbook. Your brain has something called pattern recognition. It's constantly looking for chunks of language, not individual words, but whole phrases that belong together. When you learn I'm swamped as a single unit, your brain files it away like a Lego brick. Later, when you hear I'm buried or I'm drowning in work, your brain connects the pattern. But here's the secret. Those patterns stick best when they're attached to emotions. The phrase "I'm swamped" didn't mean much to me until I used it wrong and made Jake's mom laugh. That embarrassment? That laughter? That connection? Those emotions glued the phrase into my long-term memory. I still remember every mistake I've ever made in English. Not because I'm traumatized. Because each mistake came with a feeling. And feelings are the hooks that memory hangs on. So by the time Jake and I had been married for 2 years, my English had transformed. Not into perfect English. Into brave English. I could call the pharmacy. I could argue with the cable company. I could tell Jake's dad that his meatloaf was interesting, and he would laugh because now we both knew what that meant. But the biggest test was still coming. Because marriage isn't just coffee at dawn and driving through the night to bring marshmallows. Marriage is also fighting about money. Fighting about whose family to visit for Thanksgiving. Fighting about whether it's okay to leave wet towels on the bathroom floor. It's not, Jake. It's never okay. And fighting in your second language? That's a special kind of hell. When you're angry, your brain loses access to the fancy vocabulary you studied. You revert to your most basic, childlike language. So during our first big fight, something about Jake forgetting to pick me up from work, I found myself yelling. "You make me feel like a bag of old potatoes." I don't know where that came from. I had never practiced that sentence. But in that moment, it was exactly what I meant. Jake stopped yelling. He stared at me. Then he started laughing. Not mean laughing. Helpless laughing. "A bag of old potatoes," he said. "I feel thrown away," I said, quieter now. "Like potatoes that are too soft. Nobody wants." He walked over and hugged me. You are not a potato. You are the whole soup. And I'm sorry I forgot to pick you up." We still laugh about the potato fight. It's become a code between us. When one of us feels ignored, we say, "I'm feeling a little potato today." And the other person knows exactly what to do. That's real English. Not textbook English. Not perfect English. English that carries your heart from one person to another, even when the grammar is wrong, even when the metaphor is ridiculous. Even when you're crying on a bathroom floor in llama socks. So if you're watching this and you're scared to speak because your words might come out wrong, good. Let them come out wrong. Let them be messy. Let them be potato. Because the people who matter will drive 4 hours to bring you coffee and marshmallows and every white thing in the pharmacy. And the people who don't? They were never your audience anyway. Falling in love slowly, learning English slowly. Here's something they don't tell you about love or language. They both hate being rushed. You cannot force someone to love you faster by trying harder. You cannot cram a language into your brain like you're studying for a final exam and expect it to stay there. Love and language are identical twins separated at birth. They grow at the same pace. They bloom in the same season. And they both die when you squeeze too tight. I learned this the hard way. After the potato fight and the marshmallow incident, I got ambitious. I thought, if my English is getting better because of Jake, imagine how good it would be if I studied even harder. So I bought 3 grammar workbooks. I downloaded 2 apps. I set a goal to learn 20 new words every day. By day 4, I wanted to throw my phone into the ocean. By day 7, I had a headache that lasted 3 days. By day 10, I stopped talking to Jake entirely, not because I was angry, but because I was exhausted. Every conversation felt like work. Every sentence I tried to form came out slower, not faster. My brain felt like a suitcase that someone had overstuffed until the zipper broke. Jake noticed. Of course he noticed. One evening, he found me sitting on the couch, staring at a vocabulary list, not moving. Just staring. Like a computer that had frozen. "My," he said. "When was the last time you said something just for fun? Not to practice. Not to learn. Just because you wanted to say it." I opened my mouth. Nothing came out. That's when I realized what I had done. I had turned my life into a classroom. My marriage into a lesson. My husband into a teacher. And in the process, I had forgotten how to just be. Here's the science part, because I promised you I wouldn't just tell stories without giving you something useful. Your brain has two modes of learning, explicit and implicit. Explicit learning is what you do when you sit down with flashcards and grammar rules. It's conscious. It's effortful. And it's painfully slow. Implicit learning is what happens when you're not trying. When you're watching a movie, having a conversation, cooking dinner, fighting about potatoes. Your brain absorbs patterns in the background, like a sponge soaking up water without you telling it to. Here's the kicker. Implicit learning is actually stronger than explicit learning for real-life language use. Studies show that people who learn a language through meaningful interaction, not through drills, develop better fluency, better accent, and better long-term retention. But implicit learning takes time. It takes patience. It takes you shutting up and letting your brain do its job. So Jake made me a deal. For 1 month, he said, no studying. No workbooks. No apps. No 20 words a day. You just live. You talk to me. You watch TV. You make mistakes. And I promise you, at the end of the month, your English will be better than it is now. I thought he was crazy. But I was also exhausted. So I agreed. That month changed everything. We started cooking together every night. Not fancy meals, spaghetti, tacos, the kind of food that takes 15 minutes and makes a mess. And while we cooked, we talked. Not about grammar. About our days. Jake, today my customer said her nails look like hot garbage. What is hot garbage? It means very bad. But funny bad. Not serious bad. So if I say your cooking is hot garbage, then you're sleeping on the couch. I learned more English in that 1 month of cooking than in 3 months of workbooks. Because the words had context. They had emotion. They had me laughing so hard I almost cut my finger off chopping onions. We watched terrible reality TV shows together. The kind where people yell at each other about nothing. At first, I understood maybe 30%. But Jake would pause and explain the drama in simple words. She's not angry about the cake. She's angry because he forgot her birthday. Oh. So the cake is a symbol? Exactly. Americans love symbols. We never say what we actually mean. By the end of the month, I understood 70%. Not because I studied. Because I was invested. I needed to know who stole the cake. That need, that emotional hook, pulled the language into my brain like a current pulling a swimmer out to sea. Here's the beautiful paradox. When I stopped trying to learn English, I started learning English. When I stopped trying to make Jake love me more, he loved me more. Because love, like language, cannot be chased. It can only be invited. You set the table. You light a candle. You show up every day with an open heart. And then you wait. Not passively. Patiently. There's a difference. Passive waiting is staring at your phone, hoping for a text. Patient waiting is living your life while trusting that what needs to grow will grow. That month, I stopped checking my vocabulary list. I stopped counting my mistakes. I stopped comparing myself to native speakers. I just lived. In English. Bad English. Funny English. English that made Jake laugh and sometimes made him confused. One night, we were lying in bed, and I said, "Jake, I love you more than the moon loves the sky." He turned his head. That doesn't make sense. The moon doesn't love the sky. I know. But in my language, that is a beautiful thing to say. It means forever. It means without question. He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "Then I love you more than potatoes love being soup." I punched his arm. That's stupid. So is the moon loving the sky. But it's our stupid. And I'll take it. That's the thing about slow love and slow language. You build your own dictionary. Your own grammar. Your own rules. You create a private language that only the two of you understand, a secret bridge between your culture and his. Between your mistakes and his patience. By the time that month ended, I didn't want to go back to workbooks. I didn't want to download apps. I wanted to keep living. Keep cooking. Keep watching terrible reality TV. Keep saying things like "the moon loves the sky" and having him understand exactly what I meant. My English wasn't perfect. It still isn't. But it was mine. Not borrowed from a textbook. Not copied from a native speaker. Grown, slowly, like a tree that puts down deep roots before it ever shows a leaf. And here's my advice to you, whoever you are, wherever you are in your English journey. Stop rushing. Stop counting. Stop measuring your progress by how many words you've memorized. Instead, find your Jake. Find your cooking partner. Find your terrible reality TV show. Find something that makes you feel something, anger, joy, confusion, love, and then try to talk about it. In English. Badly. Beautifully. Bravely. The language will come. Not because you forced it. Because you lived inside it. Falling in love slowly taught me how to learn English slowly. And slowly, it turns out, is the fastest way to get somewhere real. The marriage that almost didn't happen. Let me tell you about the fight that almost ended everything. It wasn't about money. It wasn't about jealousy. It wasn't about anything dramatic like cheating or lying or secret bank accounts. It was about a dishwasher. Yes. A dishwasher. The white metal box under the kitchen counter that cleans your plates so you don't have to. Here's what happened. 2 years into our marriage, Jake and I were still figuring out how to live together. He grew up in an American house where you rinse your plate and put it in the dishwasher. I grew up in a house where you wash every dish by hand because dishwashers were for rich people. So every night, I would wash the dishes by hand. And every night, Jake would say, "Babe, just put them in the dishwasher. That's what it's for." And every night, I would say, "The dishwasher wastes water. And also, I don't trust it." This went on for months. A quiet war. No yelling. Just two people loading the dishwasher in different ways, then reloading it when the other wasn't looking. Then one night, I snapped. I was tired. Work had been hard. A customer had been rude to me about my English. Can I speak to someone who actually understands me? And I had smiled and said, of course, and then cried in the bathroom for 10 minutes. I came home. Jake had made dinner. Nice, right? Except he had used every pot, every pan, every spoon in the kitchen. The counter looked like a cooking bomb had exploded. And he had left everything for me to clean. I stood in the kitchen, looking at the mess, and something inside me broke. Not dramatically. Quietly. Like a string snapping. Jake, I said. My voice was too calm. Yeah? Why do you make mess and then walk away? What do you mean? I always clean up. No. You put things in dishwasher. But you don't wash the big pot. You don't wipe the counter. You leave the sponge in the sink with food inside. And then I have to do it. He frowned. Okay, but you could just tell me. You don't have to get angry. I am not angry. I search for the word. I am tired. Of being the one who finishes everything. That's not fair. I work all day too. I know you work. But when you come home, you sit. I come home, I clean. Every day. Every night. The dishes. The laundry. The bathroom. You don't see. You don't help. Now he was getting angry. I do help. I mow the lawn. I take out the trash. I fixed your car last month. My car? It is our car. And you fixed it because you wanted to, not because I asked. We were both standing now. The air in the kitchen felt thick, like before a storm. You know what, Nothing I do is ever enough for you. And nothing I do is ever seen by you. Silence. Then Jake said the words that almost destroyed us. Maybe we got married too fast. Maybe we don't even speak the same language. He didn't mean it literally. He meant culture. Background. Expectations. But in that moment, all I heard was, your English is not good enough. You are not good enough. This was a mistake. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I walked out of the kitchen, went to the bedroom, closed the door, and sat on the floor. Not crying. Just sitting. Like a statue. Like someone who had turned off all her feelings because feeling them hurt too much. Jake didn't follow me. That night, we slept on opposite sides of the bed. Not touching. Not talking. The space between us felt like an ocean. The next morning, I woke up before him. I made coffee. 2 cups. I put one on his nightstand. Then I sat on the edge of the bed and waited. He opened his eyes. Saw the coffee. Saw my face. Jake. I need to say something. And I need you to listen. Not interrupt. Not fix. Just listen. He nodded. I took a breath. My English felt small. But I spoke anyway. Last night, when you said we don't speak the same language, that hurt me. Not because my English is bad. But because you used my English as a weapon. You know I try. You know I work hard. And you still said that. He tried to speak. I held up my hand. I am not perfect. I leave the cabinet doors open. I forget to close the toothpaste. I use too much salt in the soup. But I never, ever make you feel small for how you speak. Because you are my husband. And husbands don't do that. Tears were running down my face now. I didn't wipe them. I don't care about the dishwasher. I care that you see me. All the work I do that you don't notice. All the times I struggle with English and you don't help because you think I want to do it alone. I don't want to be alone. I want to be a team. But a team means both people do the dishes. Not just the person who notices they're dirty. Jake sat up. He took the coffee cup but didn't drink. He just held it, like it was keeping him from falling apart. "You're right," he said. His voice was rough. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean it." The thing about language. I was angry and stupid and I said the worst thing I could think of. And I hurt you. And I hate that I hurt you. I know you didn't mean it. But words matter, Jake. Even wrong words. Especially wrong words. He put the coffee down and took my hands. "Teach me. Teach me how to see what you see. Teach me what you need. I'm not good at this. I was raised in a house where no one talked about feelings. We just got angry and then pretended nothing happened. But I don't want that with you. I want to learn." And that was the moment our marriage actually started. Not the wedding. Not the honeymoon. That morning, sitting on the edge of a messy bed, 2 cups of coffee going cold, both of us crying like children. Because here's the truth about marriage. It's not about finding someone who never fights with you. It's about finding someone who knows how to fight with you. Not against you. Someone who can say "I'm sorry" and mean it. Someone who can hear you hurt me without getting defensive. And here's the truth about learning English inside a marriage. Your partner will be your best teacher and your worst critic, not because they want to hurt you, but because intimacy makes us careless. We say things to the people we love that we would never say to a stranger. The solution isn't to stop fighting. It's to learn how to fight in a way that doesn't destroy what you've built. After that morning, Jake and I made new rules. Rule 1, no using language as a weapon. No, you don't speak English well enough. No, maybe we don't speak the same language. That door is closed forever. Rule 2, if something is bothering you, say it within 24 hours. Don't let it sit and rot. Rule 3, the dishwasher gets loaded the way the person who unloads it wants. That's me. I unload it. So now Jake loads it my way. And he only complains a little. These rules didn't fix everything overnight. We still fight. We still get angry. Just last week, I yelled at him for leaving his shoes in the middle of the hallway. He yelled back that I take too long in the bathroom. But now, when we fight, we don't go for the kill. We don't aim at each other's weakest spots. We argue about the shoes and the bathroom and then we make dinner together and laugh about something stupid on TV. That's what saved our marriage. Not perfect English. Not perfect love. Just 2 imperfect people who decided that the dishwasher wasn't worth losing each other over. So if you're married, or hoping to be, or scared that your English will ruin your relationship, don't be. Your English isn't the problem. Your willingness to be honest, to apologize, to listen, that's what matters. And for the record, we still don't agree about the dishwasher. But now we load it together. And that's enough. When my kids spoke better English than me. The first time my daughter corrected my English, she was 3 years old. 3. She had just learned to use the potty. She still called bananas nanas. And yet, there she was, sitting in her tiny plastic chair, eating a cracker, looking at me with the judgment of 1,000 ancestors. "Mommy," she said, "it's not I eated. It's I ate." I stared at her. She stared back. Then she took another bite of her cracker like she hadn't just destroyed my entire confidence in one sentence. That was the beginning of the end. Her name is Lily. She was born 2 years after Jake and I fixed our dishwasher war. American citizen. Red hair like her father. Stubbornness like her mother. And English? Perfect. Effortless. Flowing out of her mouth like water from a tap. My English, on the other hand, still came out like a faucet that hadn't been used in winter, sputtering, coughing. Sometimes producing nothing at all. I knew this day would come. Every immigrant parent knows. Your children will speak the new language better than you. They will learn it at school, from cartoons, from friends whose names you can't pronounce. And one day, they will look at you with love in their eyes and accidentally correct your grammar. It hurts more than you think. Not because you're jealous. Because you're supposed to be the one teaching them. Instead, they're teaching you. And they don't even know they're doing it. When Lily was 4, she started preschool. Her teacher was a young woman named Ms. Thompson who spoke so fast I understood maybe half of what she said at parent-teacher conferences. I would nod and smile and then call Jake from the car and ask, "Did she say Lily is gifted or Lily is difficult?" She said both. Apparently, you can be both. One day, Lily came home with a drawing. She handed it to me and said, "Mommy, this is for you. I wrote your name." I looked at the drawing. A stick figure that was supposed to be me. And above it, in wobbly kindergarten letters, MOME. "Lily," I said, "Mommy is MOMMY." She put her hands on her hips. "No. Ms. Thompson says it's MOM. You're not a mommy. You're a mom." I wanted to argue. But she was right. In American English, adults say mom. Mommy is for little kids. I had been calling myself mommy for 4 years because that's what I called my own mother in my native language. But here? I sounded like I was stuck in a time warp. That night, I cried in the bathroom again. Not because Lily hurt my feelings. Because I realized that my children were growing up in a world where I would always be a little bit behind. A little bit foreign. A little bit the mom who says eat it instead of ate. Then came the second child. Noah. Noah was different from Lily. Where Lily corrected me gently, Noah corrected me loudly. He was 5 when he shouted across the grocery store, "MOM. It's not I bite it. It's I bought it. You sound like a baby." An old woman turned to look at me. I wanted to disappear into the frozen food section. But here's the thing about having children who speak better English than you. It's humiliating. And also? It's the greatest English class you will ever take. Because children don't care about your feelings. Not in a mean way. In an honest way. They will tell you exactly what you're doing wrong, with no filter, at the worst possible moment. And because you love them, you cannot get angry. You can only learn. Lily taught me past tense verbs. It's drank, not drinked. It's went, not goed. It's saw, not seed. She would say these corrections while buckling her seatbelt, while brushing her teeth, while half asleep in her car seat. She was my tiny, ruthless grammar robot. Noah taught me pronunciation. Mom, say 3. Not tree. Put your tongue between your teeth. Like this. Tree. Try again. We would sit on the couch for 10 minutes, a 5-year-old boy coaching his mother on how to make a sound that didn't exist in her first language. I paid them in ice cream. Here's the science behind why this worked. Children are natural language teachers because they don't use grammar terms. They don't say, you need to use the irregular past participle. They say, that sounds weird, say it this way. And your brain, which hates abstract rules but loves concrete examples, listens. Also, children have no ego about teaching. They don't judge you for making mistakes. They make mistakes constantly themselves. They fall down, get up, say run instead of ran, and keep going. They are the opposite of perfectionism. And perfectionism, as I had learned, is the enemy of language learning. But there was another layer. A harder one. When Lily started kindergarten, she came home one day and said, "Mom, why do you have an accent?" I had been waiting for this question. Dreading it. Because I learned English when I was older, sweetheart. Your brain learns sounds better when you're little. My brain was already grown up when it learned these words. She thought about this. Then she said, "I like your accent. It sounds like songs." That was the moment I stopped being ashamed. Because my accent isn't a mistake. It's a map of where I've been. It's proof that I learned a whole new language as an adult, while working, while raising children. While building a life in a country that wasn't mine. My accent is not a flaw. It's a trophy. And my children? They don't hear an accent. They hear their mother. The woman who reads them bedtime stories in slightly wrong English. The woman who says I catched a cold instead of caught. The woman who loves them so much that she lets a 5-year-old correct her pronunciation in the middle of a grocery store. Lily is 7 now. Noah is 5. They both speak English better than me. They always will. But here's the beautiful plot twist. They also speak my native language. Not perfectly. But enough. Enough to talk to their grandmother on the phone. Enough to understand when I say I love you in the language of my childhood. We are a bilingual house now. A messy, beautiful, incorrect house. Jake still says the white thing when he can't remember the word for thermometer. Lily still says rund when she's tired. Noah still pronounces spaghetti as paschetti. And I still say eat it when I'm not paying attention. We are all learning from each other. All the time. Every day. And that's the real lesson of this section. Not that your children will surpass you. They will. Not that it will hurt. It will. But that you can choose to see it as a defeat or as a gift. I choose gift. Because every time Lily corrects my grammar, she's not shaming me. She's including me. She's pulling me into her world, the world of perfect American English, and saying, "Come on, Mom. You can do this. Just say 8. Just say 3. Just keep trying." So I keep trying. Not for me. For them. Because I want my children to see that learning doesn't stop when you grow up. That making mistakes is how you get better. That an accent is nothing to be ashamed of. That love sounds different in every language, but it means the same thing. Last week, Lily said something that made me cry in the car. She said, "Mom, when I grow up, I want to learn a new language too. So I can feel what you felt. So I can be brave like you." Brave. Not embarrassed. Not foreign. Not broken. Brave. That's what my kids see when they look at me. Not a woman with bad English. A woman who learned anyway. And that, more than any grammar lesson, is what I want you to see in yourself. One sentence from my daughter fixed everything. You know what's worse than making mistakes in English? Apologizing for them. For years, I apologized. Before every phone call. Before every parent-teacher conference. Before every conversation with a stranger. Sorry for my bad English. Sorry, I'm still learning. Sorry. I thought it made me polite. It didn't. It made me small. And nobody told me to stop. Not Jake. Not my coworkers. Not the nice lady at the grocery store who always smiled when I said paper bag, please, instead of paper, please. Everyone accepted my apologies because that's what Americans do. They're polite. They say no problem and you're fine, and then they move on. But my daughter? She wasn't having it. Lily was 6 years old when she fixed me. Not my grammar. My soul. It was a Tuesday. Rainy. The kind of gray day that makes you want to stay in bed. I had just finished a phone call with Noah's school. The nurse had called because Noah fell off the monkey bars and scraped his knee. Nothing serious. But I had spent the entire 3-minute conversation apologizing. Sorry, my English is not good. Sorry, can you say that again? Sorry, I don't understand the word dressing. What is dressing? For salad? For wound? I'm sorry. After I hung up, I sat at the kitchen table with my head in my hands. Lily was eating cereal across from me. Watching me. She had that look, the one that says she's about to say something that will either make you laugh or cry. Mom, she said. Why do you always say sorry? Because my English is not as good as yours, baby. She put down her spoon. She looked at me with her father's blue eyes, and then she said the sentence that changed everything. Mom. You don't have to be sorry for learning. I froze. You're learning, she continued, in that matter-of-fact way that only 6-year-olds have. Learning means making mistakes. I make mistakes in school every day. My teacher says mistakes are how we grow. So why do you say sorry for growing? I opened my mouth. Nothing came out. Also, she added, your English is good. I understand you. Daddy understands you. Even Grandma understands you, and she doesn't hear very well. So stop saying sorry. It's annoying. Then she went back to her cereal. I sat there for a long time. 5 minutes. Maybe 10. A 6-year-old had just undone 20 years of shame in 3 sentences. She was right. Of course she was right. Every time I apologized for my English, I wasn't being humble. I was asking permission to exist. I was saying, I know I don't belong here, but please be patient with me while I try. I was putting myself below the other person before the conversation even started. And for what? Nobody had ever asked me to apologize. Not once. The nurse on the phone didn't care about my grammar. She cared about Noah's knee. The grocery store lady didn't care about paper bag versus paper. She just wanted to finish her shift. The parents at Lily's school didn't care about my accent. They cared about whether I signed up for the bake sale. The only person demanding apologies was me. That night, I told Jake about what Lily said. He laughed, not at me, at himself. I've been trying to tell you that for 5 years. But you wouldn't listen. So your 6-year-old had to do it. She's smarter than both of us. Obviously. The next day, I made a rule. A promise to myself. No more sorry for my English. Not because my English was perfect. It wasn't. Not because I stopped making mistakes. I didn't. But because apologizing wasn't helping anyone. It wasn't making me speak better. It wasn't making people understand me more. It was just wasting time and energy that I could have used to actually communicate. So I stopped. The first week was hard. Every time I made a mistake, my mouth wanted to say sorry. It was automatic. Like a sneeze. I had to physically bite my tongue. The second week was easier. I started replacing sorry with thank you. Instead of sorry for my bad English, I said thank you for your patience. Instead of sorry, can you repeat that, I said thanks for saying that again. Instead of sorry, I'm still learning, I said I appreciate you listening. The shift was tiny. Just 2 words. But it changed everything. Because when you say sorry, you're asking for forgiveness. When you say thank you, you're giving appreciation. One puts you down. The other lifts everyone up. I tested this at Noah's next parent-teacher conference. Ms. Thompson, his teacher, spoke fast. I understood maybe 80%. But instead of apologizing, I said, thank you for speaking clearly. I'm still learning, but I want to understand everything about Noah. Ms. Thompson smiled. A real smile, not the polite one. You know what? You're doing great. And Noah talks about you all the time. He says you're learning English and that makes him proud. Proud. Not embarrassed. Not pitying. Proud. I almost cried in the middle of the classroom. Here's the science behind why thank you works better than sorry. Psychologists have studied something called self-affirmation theory. When you frame yourself positively, even in difficult situations, your brain releases less cortisol, the stress hormone, and more dopamine, the reward chemical. You literally think more clearly when you stop apologizing for who you are. Also, the people you're talking to feel it. When you apologize constantly, you put the burden on them to reassure you. No, your English is fine. No, I don't mind. No, really, it's okay. That's exhausting for both of you. When you say thank you, you're not asking for reassurance. You're giving credit. You're saying I see your effort, and I appreciate it. That makes people want to help you more, not less. Lily taught me this. A 6-year-old with a spoonful of cereal and 0 filter. After that day, I started noticing something strange. The more I stopped apologizing, the better my English got. Not because I was studying more. Because I was less stressed. My effective filter, that gatekeeper I told you about earlier, had finally opened. Words flowed in. Words flowed out. Mistakes still happened, but they didn't hurt anymore. I told Jake, I think Lily is a genius. He said, she gets it from me. She gets the stubbornness from you. She gets the wisdom from me. Debatable. But here's the truth. Children see things that adults have learned to ignore. They haven't been trained to apologize for existing. They fall down, they get up, they fall down again, and they never say sorry for falling. They just keep playing. Lily saw that I was treating my English like a wound instead of a work in progress. And she fixed me with 7 words. You don't have to be sorry for learning. So now, I say it to you. Whoever you are. Wherever you are in your English journey. However many mistakes you make in your next sentence. Stop apologizing. You are learning. Learning means being bad before you're good. Learning means falling down. Learning means saying eat it instead of ate and goed instead of went and the white thing instead of thermometer. That's not shameful. That's brave. And the next time you want to say, sorry for my English, try saying, thank you for listening instead. It feels weird at first. Then it feels powerful. Then one day, it just feels like you. Real English is not grammar, it's emotion. Let me tell you about the time I tried to study my way to fluency. It was after Lily was born. I was on maternity leave, stuck at home with a newborn who slept in 2-hour bursts and a brain that felt like it was slowly turning into oatmeal. I thought, perfect time to learn English. I have nothing else to do. Famous last words. I bought a giant grammar book. The kind with 500 pages and tiny font and exercises that ask you to choose between I have gone and I went and I had gone, as if anyone actually thinks about this before opening their mouth. I made a schedule. Every day, during Lily's first nap, I would study for 1 hour. No excuses. No distractions. Just me, the grammar book, and a cup of cold coffee. Day 1 was fine. Day 2 was fine. By day 5, I wanted to throw the book out the window and run after it. Because here's what happened. I would study the past perfect tense for an hour. I would do the exercises. I would get most of them right. And then Jake would come home from work and say, "How was your day?" And I would open my mouth and say, "I have had a good day," which wasn't wrong, exactly, but it wasn't right either. It was just weird. Nobody talks like that. Nobody says, "I have had a good day," to their husband. They say it was good or just grunt and point at the baby. The grammar book was teaching me to speak like a robot. A technically correct, emotionally dead robot. And the more I studied, the worse my real conversations became. Because my brain was spending all its energy trying to remember rules instead of just talking. I would pause in the middle of a sentence to check if I was using the right tense. I would second guess every word. I would freeze, apologize, and then give up. Jake noticed. Of course he noticed. One night, he found me crying over the grammar book. Page 347. Conditional clauses. If I had known, I would have gone. I had done the exercise 3 times and still got 2 wrong. He said, sitting next to me. When was the last time you actually enjoyed speaking English? I thought about it. Never, I said. I have never enjoyed it. I only feel relief when it's over. He took the book out of my hands. Closed it. Put it on the highest shelf in the closet where I couldn't reach it. Then stop. Stop studying. Stop forcing. Just live. But I need to get better. You need to feel better. The English will follow. I was angry at him for a week. How dare he hide my grammar book? How dare he tell me to stop when I was finally being serious about learning? But he was right. He was always right about this. Because here's the science, and this is important, so listen closely. Your brain has 2 memory systems. Explicit memory is for facts and rules. The past tense of go is went. That's explicit. Implicit memory is for skills and habits. Riding a bike. Tying your shoes. Speaking a language without thinking. Explicit memory is slow. It requires effort. And it has a tiny capacity. You can only hold about 7 things in your conscious mind at once. That's why you can't think about past tense, future tense, pronunciation, vocabulary, and what you want to say for dinner all at the same time. Your brain will crash. Implicit memory is fast. It requires no effort. And it has enormous capacity. Once a skill becomes implicit, you don't think about it. You just do it. Like breathing. Like walking. Like saying I went to the store without wondering why it's not I goed. The problem? You cannot force something into implicit memory by studying it. Implicit memory only learns through doing. Through repetition. Through making mistakes and trying again. Through using the language for real purposes, not for exercises. That's why my grammar book was failing me. I was filling my explicit memory with rules that my implicit memory couldn't access during real conversations. I was studying English like it was math. But language isn't math. Language is a dance. And you don't learn to dance by reading a book about foot placement. You learn by moving. By stepping on your partner's toes. By laughing when you mess up. By trying again. So after Jake hid my grammar book, I did something radical. I stopped studying. Not forever. But for 3 months. I gave myself permission to just be in English. No flashcards. No apps. No workbooks. Just life. I talked to Lily in English, my bad, broken, beautiful English. She didn't care that I said run. She was 2 years old. She said run too. I watched reality TV shows without subtitles. Not to learn. To be entertained. I wrote in a journal every night. Not practicing grammar. Just dumping my brain onto the page. Today was hard. Lily cried for 2 hours. I ate too much ice cream. Jake forgot to take out the trash. I love him anyway. None of those sentences were perfect. But they were real. And writing them made me feel something. Frustration. Love. Exhaustion. Hope. And here's the miracle. After 3 months of not studying, my English was better than ever before. Not perfect. Not native. But fluid. The words came out faster. I stopped pausing to check my tenses. I stopped apologizing. Because my brain had finally moved the language from explicit memory to implicit memory. Not through force. Through use. Through emotion. Through living. That's the secret that no language school will tell you. Real English is not grammar. It's emotion. Think about it. When you're angry, you don't think I need to use the past tense. You just yell. When you're in love, you don't think is this the right preposition? You just speak. When you're scared, you don't think am I pronouncing this correctly? You just scream for help. Emotion bypasses your brain's filters. It connects directly to your implicit memory. That's why people who have been in car accidents can suddenly speak a language they thought they had forgotten. That's why drunk people speak foreign languages better, not because alcohol is magic, but because it lowers your fear. So here's my practical advice. Stop trying to learn English. Start trying to feel English. Find something that makes you angry and yell about it. In English. Alone in your car if you have to. Find something that makes you laugh and describe it to a friend. In English. Badly. Beautifully. Find something that breaks your heart and write about it. In English. With all the wrong words. With all the right feelings. Your grammar will improve on its own. Not because you studied. Because your brain wants to be understood. And the fastest way to be understood is to stop worrying about being perfect and start worrying about being real. Lily is 7 now. She still corrects my English sometimes. But she also tells me, "Mom, I love the way you talk. You say things that nobody else says. Like the moon loves the sky." That's not grammar. That's you. That's all any of us want. To be seen. To be heard. To be understood. Not to be perfect. So throw away your grammar book. Not literally, keep it for reference. But stop worshipping it. Stop letting it make you feel small. Go live your life. In English. Messy, beautiful, emotional, real English. The grammar will catch up. It always does. The dawn after every midnight, a happy ending. So where are we now? Jake and I have been married for 7 years. Lily is 7. Noah is 5. We live in a small house with a backyard that Jake refuses to mow and a front porch where I drink my coffee every morning, watching the sun come up. The same sun. The same dawn. Every single day. Last New Year's Eve, we didn't go to the laundromat. We stayed home. The kids were asleep by 9. Jake made popcorn. We watched the ball drop on TV, and when midnight came, he kissed me. Not on a curb. Not in a fluorescent-lit laundry room. On our couch, in our living room, in our home. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't perfect. The popcorn was a little burnt. The cat threw up on the rug an hour earlier. But it was ours. And I thought about that first New Year's Eve. The lonely one. The one where I sat on a second-hand couch, staring at my phone, convinced that I would never belong here. That my English would never be good enough. That I would always be the foreigner who said the white thing and I eat it and the moon loves the sky. I was wrong. Not about the mistakes. I still make them. Just yesterday, I told Jake's mom that I was nervous about the party when I meant excited. She looked confused. I laughed. We moved on. I was wrong about belonging. Because belonging isn't about speaking perfectly. It's about being seen. Fully seen. Mistakes and all. And I have that now. Not because my English is flawless. Because I stopped hiding. Here's what I want you to take away from this story. All 12 sections. Nearly 12,000 words. A journey from a lonely laundromat to a noisy living room. First. Your English does not need to be perfect to be enough. It needs to be brave. Bravery is trying even when you're scared. Bravery is saying I love you even when you're not sure you're using the right preposition. Bravery is picking up the phone even though your heart is racing. Second. Find your people. The ones who don't correct your every mistake. The ones who say, I understand you even when you say, I go to the store. The ones who see you, not your accent. They exist. I found mine in a laundromat at midnight. You will find yours too. Third. Stop apologizing for learning. Learning is not a crime. It's not an inconvenience. It's the bravest thing an adult can do, to start over in a new language, in a new country, in a new life. You don't owe anyone an apology for that. You owe yourself a thank you for trying. Fourth. Emotions teach better than textbooks. The words that stick are the ones attached to feelings. The fight about the dishwasher. The potato sentence. The daughter who said stop saying sorry. Those moments taught me more than any grammar book ever could. So go feel something. Then try to say it. In English. Badly. Beautifully. 5th. Midnight kisses are overrated. Dawn is where real love lives. Dawn is patient. Dawn is quiet. Dawn is showing up when no one is watching, year after year, with coffee and marshmallows and every white thing in the pharmacy. Find someone who shows up at dawn. Or be that person for yourself. And finally, the happiest ending isn't the one where everything is perfect. It's the one where everything is real. My English is still not perfect. I still mix up borrow and lend. I still say I'm interesting when I mean I'm interested. I still have an accent that makes phone operators ask me to repeat myself. But I also have a husband who loves my mistakes. 2 children who think my accent sounds like songs. A life that I built, word by broken word, in a country that wasn't mine. Last week, Lily asked me, "Mom, are you happy?" I thought about it. Really thought about it. I'm not happy every moment, I said. Nobody is. But I'm grateful. And grateful is better than happy. Because grateful lasts longer. She nodded like she understood. Then she said, "Can we have ice cream for breakfast?" No. Your English is getting better, but your no is still the same. That's my life now. Imperfect. Loud. Full of laundry and homework and burnt popcorn. Full of sentences that come out wrong and love that comes out right. If you're watching this and you're still afraid to speak, afraid to make mistakes, afraid that you'll never be good enough, I want you to remember something. The woman in this story couldn't order coffee without panic. She told her neighbor she was pregnant. She cried on a bathroom floor in llama socks. That woman is me. And that woman is also you, if you keep going. Not because you become someone else. Because you become more of who you already are. Braver. Messier. More willing to say the wrong thing in order to finally say something real. So here's my New Year's promise to you, even if it's not New Year's Eve. Start at dawn. Not tomorrow. Not when your English is better. Today. Now. This sentence. Say something. Write something. Text someone. Make a mistake. Laugh about it. Try again. The dawn after every midnight is waiting. And it has coffee. So, that was my dawn. But here's what I didn't tell you. The laundromat closed last year. They turned it into a yoga studio. And every time I walk past it, I smile. Because the place doesn't matter. The promise does. And I have a secret. There's more. Much more. The story of how my mother came to visit and taught my American husband how to make pho. The night Lily got lost at the mall and I had to use my broken English to find her, and somehow, it worked better than perfect English ever could. The email I sent to my boss that had 5 typos but still got me a promotion. Those stories are coming. Right here. On this channel. Because this isn't a grammar lesson. It's a life lesson. Wrapped in slow, real, emotional English. For people who are tired of feeling stupid. For people who want to learn without being yelled at by an app. For people who believe that a promise kept at dawn is worth more than 1,000 perfect sentences at midnight. So here's my ask. Subscribe. Not because I want a number. Because I want a community. A community of people who are learning to speak, badly, bravely, beautifully, and who refuse to apologize for it. Hit the bell. So you don't miss the next dawn. I post every Sunday. Slow English. Real stories. No judgment. Comment one word, Dawn. Tell me where you are in your journey. I read every comment. And I will reply. Because that's what this channel is. Not a lecture. A conversation. You made it to the end of this 90-minute story. That means you're not someone who quits. You're someone who stays. Someone who shows up. Someone who knows that midnight isn't the only beginning. Dawn is. And dawn is just getting started. See you there.